What if the debate around Alberta separatism is the exact same mistake a Disney movie tried to warn us about? Not through politics, but through story. There's a moment in Moana where everything looks fine on the surface. The island is beautiful, the people are happy, the system works. But underneath that illusion, something is going wrong. The crops are failing, the fish are disappearing, and no one wants to talk about it. Because talking about it means questioning everything they've built their lives on. Moana sees it. She feels it. Something isn't right. But her father, the chief, won't let her go beyond the reef. Not because he's evil, not because he's stupid, but because he's afraid. Afraid of what's out there. Afraid of what he might lose, afraid of repeating a past that nearly destroyed his people. And in his mind, he's not being controlling, he's protecting them. Because from his perspective, everything they need to survive is already here. So why risk it? Why challenge the system when the system has kept them alive? But here's the problem. The very thing that once ensured their survival is now the thing putting it at risk. The island is dying, and the longer they pretend it isn't, the worse it gets. Moana doesn't want to rebel. She doesn't want to destroy her culture. She wants to understand it, to follow it back to something it used to be, something it forgot. Because deep down, she knows the answer isn't just staying, and it isn't just leaving. Something more dangerous than both. It's change, and change means facing the unknown. It means risking failure. It means letting go of control in order to survive. Her father couldn't see that, because to him, leaving the island was an exploration, it was death. And that's the tension. The one between protecting what works and adapting when it doesn't. And it's not just in movies. It's happening right now, in Alberta, in Canada, and in the way we think about politics, culture, and each other. Because the real question isn't who's right. It's this: what happens when the thing that once kept you safe starts slowly killing you? If you strip politics down to its core, it isn't left versus right. It's something much older than that. It's the tension between two instincts. That every human being carries the instinct to preserve and the instinct to adapt. What we call conservatism is the desire to protect what already works, to hold on to systems, values, and traditions that have proven themselves over time. Because survival isn't guaranteed. And if something works, you don't throw it away lightly. You conserve it, you protect it, you pass it on. Because everything you have was built on what came before, and losing that can mean losing everything. But then there's the other side. What we call liberalism is the willingness to move beyond what is known, to question systems, to challenge tradition, to explore new possibilities, even when they're uncertain. Because the world doesn't stay the same, conditions change, environments shift, and what worked yesterday might not work tomorrow. So if you can't adapt, you don't survive. And that's the truth most people miss. These aren't opposing forces, they're complementary ones. You need both. Too much preservation, and you become rigid, stuck in a past that no longer exists. Too much adaptation, and you lose your foundation. Drifting without structure. One keeps you grounded, the other keeps you alive. And when they're in balance, they create something powerful. A system that can endure and evolve. But that's not what we see today.
Because somewhere along the way, these instincts stopped being tools and became identities. People don't use conservative thinking, they become conservatives. People don't use liberal thinking, they become liberals. And the moment that happens, something breaks, because now you're no longer responding to reality. You're defending a position. You're not asking what works. You're asking what side you're on. And once that happens, balance disappears. Nuance disappears. Adaptability disappears. Now you don't have a system that can think. You have teams. And teams don't solve problems. They fight each other. Which means the real issue isn't which side is right. It's this: what happens when people lose the ability to move between both?
So what does all of this have to do with Alberta separatism? On the surface, it looks like a political issue. Taxes, resources, federal control. But underneath that, there's something deeper. A feeling, a loss of control, a loss of identity, a sense that the place you grew up in isn't the same anymore. And for a lot of people, that feeling is real. Industries change, jobs disappear, rules come from far away, made by people who don't live your reality, and it starts to feel like you're being managed instead of represented. So the response is understandable. If this system doesn't work for us, why stay in it? If we could just separate, start fresh, take control, maybe we'd be okay. And emotionally, that makes sense. But here's where things get complicated. Because this isn't a tribe leaving an island. This isn't Moana sailing beyond the reef to find something new. This is something else entirely. Because Alberta isn't a self-contained world. It's part of a larger system, economically, politically, geographically. It doesn't just detach like a canoe leaving shore. It's more like trying to step outside of a structure you're still inside of. And that's where the illusion comes in. Because when we talk about provinces and nations, we talk about them like they're physical things, like they're solid, like they can just be split apart and move in different directions. But they're not. They're systems, agreements, networks of dependency built over time. And that doesn't mean change is impossible. It means change isn't simple. Because the real issue isn't, should Alberta stay or go? The real issue is, what problem are people trying to solve? Is it economic pressure? Is it cultural change? Is it a loss of trust in leadership? Because if those problems don't get addressed, separating doesn't fix them, it just relocates them. And this is where that balance between preservation and adaptation starts to matter again. Because some people want to preserve what Alberta used to be. Others want to adapt to what the world is becoming. And both sides think the other is the problem. But what if they're both reacting to the same pressure? What if this isn't about division, but about a system that people no longer understand or trust? Because when people feel like they have no control, they don't look for nuance, they look for escape. And sometimes that escape looks like separation. But the real question is, are people trying to build something new? Or are they just trying to get away from something they don't understand anymore? To understand what's really happening, you have to go deeper than politics. You have to look at culture, because culture isn't just food, language, or tradition. It's a programming system. It teaches people how to think, how to behave, what to value, what to reject. And most people don't even realize they're running that program. They think they're choosing, but in many cases they're repeating patterns they inherited from family, from community, from history. And one of the things culture programs is what to fear. Not always consciously, but deeply, instinctively, because human beings are wired to be cautious of what's unfamiliar. That instinct kept us alive. But today, it doesn't always show up as survival. It shows up as tension, discomfort, judgment, and sometimes hostility. Now here's where things get complicated, because people don't just react to the unknown, they react to patterns they believe are real, things they've seen, things they've heard, things they've been told to expect. And sometimes those patterns feel convincing, they feel grounded, they feel justified. But here's the problem. Those patterns are often simplified, generalized, taken from a few experiences, and projected onto entire groups. And once that happens, people stop seeing individuals. They start seeing categories, labels, assumptions, and at that point, it's no longer perception, it's prejudice. But here's the part most people don't want to admit. Fear itself isn't the problem. Fear is human. Fear is information. It tells you something feels uncertain, something feels unfamiliar, something feels out of your control. The real problem is dishonesty about that fear. Because when people aren't allowed to admit what they're actually afraid of, they don't process it. They suppress it. And when fear gets suppressed, it doesn't disappear. It changes form. It comes out as anger, blame, resentment, and eventually it gets projected onto other people. Not because those people are the cause, but because they're the easiest target. And this is how you end up with a cycle where people who believe they're fighting prejudice end up expressing it, where fear gets moralized instead of understood, and where no one actually deals with what's really going on. Because the truth is, every culture carries patterns, every group carries history, every system carries strengths and flaws. But none of that gives you the right to reduce a human being to a category, and none of it removes your responsibility to examine your own reactions. Because if you don't understand your fear will speak for you. And when that happens, you're no longer thinking, you're reacting. And reaction is easy to control. Once you understand culture as programming, you start to see something else. When people move, they don't just bring themselves, they bring entire systems with them. Ways of thinking, ways of living, ways of organizing reality. Beliefs about authority, beliefs about family, beliefs about truth. And those systems don't disappear at the border. They come with the person. And when multiple systems exist in the same place, they don't automatically harmonize. Sometimes they do. But often, they create friction. Not because people are bad, but because their frameworks don't align. And this is where the idea of multiculturalism starts to get complicated. Because on the surface, it sounds ideal, different cultures, different perspectives, all coexisting together. But underneath that ideal, there's a real question. What holds it all together? What are the shared rules? What are the shared expectations? Because a society can't function on diversity alone. It needs coherence. It needs enough alignment for people to cooperate. And this is the paradox of free society says, you can live how you want,
But a functioning society requires some level of shared behavior. So where is that line? How much difference can a system absorb before it starts to break down? And who decides that? Because if you enforce too much sameness, you lose freedom. But if you allow too much fragmentation, you lose stability. And now people aren't just disagreeing, they're operating in completely different realities, different assumptions, different values, different definitions of what's acceptable. And when that happens, tension isn't a possibility, it's inevitable. Because now it's not just about preference, it's about conflict between systems. And most people don't see it that way. They don't see systems. They see people, faces, groups, identities, and they assign blame to whatever is easiest to point at, instead of asking what's actually colliding here. Because the deeper issue isn't who belongs or who doesn't. It's this: can a society balance freedom and cohesion at the same time? Or does it eventually collapse under the weight of its own contradictions? Because if those contradictions aren't understood, they don't get resolved. They get ignored until they become impossible to ignore. And by then, it's usually too late.
At this point, it's easy to talk about systems, culture, politics, ideology. But it gets a lot more real when you see how it plays out in everyday life. Because this isn't just happening out there. It's happening between people in conversations and assumptions and the way we see each other before we even speak. I've been called a separatist just for being from Alberta. Not because of what I've said, not because of what I believe, but because of where I'm from and the moment that happens. I'm no longer an individual. I'm a category, a stereotype, a pattern. Someone else believes is real, and what's interesting is the people saying it often see themselves as against prejudice, as aware, as open-minded. But in that moment, they're doing the exact same thing. They claim to stand against. They're reducing a person to an assumption, and that's the loop. The one most people never notice, where pattern recognition turns into generalization. Generalization turns into identity, and identity turns into judgment. And once that cycle starts, it doesn't matter what side you're on. It happens everywhere, different labels, same behavior. And this is where things get uncomfortable, because it means this isn't just a them problem. It's a human problem. Something we all do, especially when we feel certain, especially when we feel justified, especially when we think we're the ones who see clearly, because that's when we stop questioning ourselves. And once that happens, we stop learning. We stop listening. We stop seeing people for who they actually are, and start seeing them as reflections of what we already believe. And that's how division sustains itself, not just through disagreement, but through assumption, through projection, through the quiet belief that we already understand each other, when in reality, we've barely started looking. Because if you can reduce someone to a label that easily, you never have to challenge your own perspective. You never have to ask harder questions. You never have to confront what might be wrong in the way you see the world. And that's comfortable. But it comes at a cost. Because the more certain you are, without understanding, the easier it becomes to misjudge everything.
and everyone, including yourself.
By the end of Moana, they don't stay on the island, and they don't abandon it either. They remember who they were, wayfinders, people who understood the ocean, not feared it. They didn't lose their culture, they rediscovered it. And in doing that, they became something new, something stronger. Because the answer was never to choose between preservation or change. It was to understand both, to know when to hold on and when to let go. And that's the part we struggle with, not just in politics, but in life. Because it's easy to cling to what's familiar, even when it stops working. And it's easy to chase change without understanding what you're leaving behind. But real growth requires something harder than both. It requires awareness, the ability to see what's actually happening, not what you've been told, not what you've been conditioned to believe, but what's real. Because culture can guide you, but it can also limit you. Fear can protect you, but it can also control you. And if you don't understand the difference, you don't get to choose. You just react. And that's where most people stay, reacting, defending, dividing, without ever asking, what am I actually trying to protect? And what am I afraid to face? Because once you ask those questions, things start to change. Not all at once, but enough to move forward, enough to see differently, enough to stop turning everything into a fight and start turning it into understanding. Because the goal was never to pick a side. It was to become someone who can see beyond them, someone who can preserve what matters without being trapped by it, and adapt to what's coming without losing themselves. Because if you can't adapt, you die. And if you can't preserve, you disappear. But if you can learn to do both, you don't just survive. You find your way.